Morning, boys and girls. Today's Wednesday, so we are going to read My Father's Dragon. Now, last week we read chapter 4, so this week we're going to read which one? You're right, chapter 5. Now, let's do a little math. Is 5 an odd number or an even number? Does everybody have a partner? No, our thumb doesn't have a partner. So 5 is an odd number. Next question. There are 10 chapters in our book. Okay, and we're going to do chapter 5 today. So let's put up 10, and how many more do we have left? If we read 5, we'll put that one down, and then we'll have how many left? We'll have 5 left. So, let's get started and see what Elmer and the dragon are up to today. Now remember, our book is Elmer and the Dragon. It's part of a trilogy, and it's by Ruth Stiles Gannett, illustrated by Ruth Chrisman Gannett. So, let's get started. Flute, the canary. Elmer and the dragon rested a while on top of the cliff, watching the waves spreading out over the sandbar. Suddenly, a little voice chirped, "You're Elmer Elevator, aren't you?" Elmer was too startled to answer. "Aren't you?" "Of course, it's been 3 years, and people do change." Elmer looked all around, but he couldn't see anybody. "Yes, I'm Elmer, but who and where are you?" he asked. "Look up in the tree above you. It's me, Flute." Elmer and the dragon looked up, and there he was, Flute the canary. Funny little Flute. With his black eyebrows and one black feather in each wing. "Oh, Flute, how glad I am to see you. But how did you get here?" "I flew here the day you let me out of my cage when your mother went to answer the doorbell. This is where all the escaped canaries live. Feather Island, we call it. But what on earth are you doing here?" "Well, I just rescued this baby dragon, and he was flying me home, only we got caught in a storm and landed here instead. And now he's got to rest and get plenty of food and water before we can go on." "Does he eat canaries?" "I should say not," snorted the dragon. "Only fruits and vegetables and lollipops." "That's a relief," said Flute. "I almost didn't talk to you because the rest of the canaries were afraid. I'll just tell them everything's all right." And Flute trilled loudly in every direction. Soon canaries were chirping all over the island, and the pine trees rustled with fluttering wings. "Let's go eat," said the dragon, who was bored and still hungry and thirsty. So Flute flew down and rode on Elmer's shoulder as they walked through the pines. "Tell me, Flute, do people live on this island?" asked Elmer. "No, just canaries." "That's what I thought. Well, how have you been getting along without my mother? She's never stopped worrying about you." "Quite well, thank you," said Flute, "but I'm beginning to suffer from the island disease." "What's that?" "I know it sounds silly, but the whole island is sick with curiosity, and old King Cane is actually dying of it." "Who's King Cane?" asked the dragon, becoming somewhat interested. "He's the king of the canaries. He's really King Cane the 11th. His ancestors, King and Queen Cane first, were the first canaries to live on the island. They came with a party of settlers, but the settlers sailed away after a month or two, and they left King Cane and his wife behind." "Now I understand about the ladder and the bucket and the pine trees and the apple orchard," said Elmer. "Yes," said Flute. "They are the work of the settlers, But to continue, migrating birds often stop by here, and King Cane, being lonesome, told them to ask escaped canaries to live on his island. But even after many canaries had come, he was never well or happy, and when the other birds asked why not, King Cane would answer, "I'm dying of curiosity." Pretty soon the other canaries grew curious to know why he was so curious, but he told the reason only to his eldest son. And so they all grew sick with curiosity. Finally, when King Cane the First was very old canary, he did die of curiosity, and his eldest son became King Cane the Second. "Skunk cabbage! I smell skunk cabbage!" interrupted the dragon right in the middle of the story, because by this time they had come out onto the meadow. "It's right over there in the swamp," said Elmer, and the dragon lumbered off to eat and drink cold water. King Cane the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and 10th all died of curiosity as very old canaries, and now King Cane the 11th is sick with it, and the rest of us are sick too. I tell you it's an awful thing," continued Flute. "I suppose so," said Elmer. "I wonder what they could have been so curious about." See, there you go, getting curious. What a great day it will be when this island gets over the plague of curiosity. "Maybe I could help King Cane the 11th, suggested Elmer. "If he weren't curious anymore, then nobody else would be curious to know why he's curious, and everybody would get well." "That's right," said Flute. "Let's go see the king. He lives in the biggest tree in the forest." Elmer yelled to the dragon that he'd be back soon, but all he could hear was loud munching and drinking noises in the bushes. Well, that's the end of our chapter. Our next chapter is chapter 6. Are you curious to see what happens in chapter 6? Well, it's okay to be curious because we're not going to get sick if we're curious. It's good to be curious and ask questions. I hope you all have a wonderful day. I miss you. Bye-bye.